Welcome to Rodney and Dr. A's Relationship Hub. Whether you're single, dating, or married, this is your go-to place for all discussions about relationships. Our goal is to inform, empower, and restore. Today's topic, are you ready for marriage? Picture this. Boy meets girl. Boy falls in love with girl. Boy asks girl to marry him. Of course she says yes. They have 2.5 kids, a dog, and a house with a white picket fence, and they live happily ever after. But that's not really how marriage works. It's nothing like that fairy tale that we're told as children. There's a lot more that goes into being married than any of us ever think about on the front end.
Oh, yes.
Ain't that right, my love?
Yes. According to research, 50% of all first marriages fail. According to research, people who marry multiple times, their rate of divorce failure increases. For example, 67% of people who've married their second time, their marriages have failed. 73% of people who've married the third time, their marriages have failed. So what does that say? Stop getting married? Because the more you marry, the more you fail?
I think there's a little more underlying than that.
I think a lot of it is because they didn't go through a premarital class or training. They didn't really understand what marriage really is. I mean, there are a lot of precursors that could have taken place to, cause a marriage to fail.
Definitely.
So, what do you think is the number one reason why people divorce? No.
Finances.
The number one reason is the lack of commitment. The number two reason is infidelity. Research also shows that people who cohabitate, they live together before marriage, they have a higher chance of divorce.
So I guess that old myth about trying to milk out before you buy the cow is not true at all.
You may have had fun milking the cow, but according to research, the marriage failure is high.
Very interesting.
What is marriage? Marriage is love, commitment, teamwork. But what you're doing is you're promising to honor, respect, take care of. You're making a promise to God that you will cherish each other, you will love each other, you will commit to each other, you will honor each other, you will respect each other, you will work together until death do you part.
And that's an interesting thing about marriage that we even had to learn when we really looked at those vows. People think that they're making a commitment or making a promise to one another. You're really making a promise to God about what you're going to do with and for one another. So what do I want to do when I'm thinking about getting married? Should I be talking to that person and maybe communicating with that significant other that I'm thinking about getting married? Absolutely. Now, funny story, Dr. A told me she wasn't going to get married until she was 27. We got into a very heated argument our freshman year in college because I talked about us getting married and she gave me all this rigmarole about I ain't ready and I'm going to get my career and I'm going to do this. By the time we hung up that phone, I was 38 hot. I think she was pressing my buttons a little bit though. But again, if I'm thinking about getting married, it's absolutely paramount that I communicate that with that person. That doesn't mean that I'm asking them at that very moment to marry me. But if I feel that attraction, if I feel that love, if I'm attracted to how wonderful they are and how truthful they are and trustworthy they are, and I feel like that's the person I want to spend my life with, I might want to check with that other person to make sure they're feeling the same. Because if we never have that communication, when I finally get down on one knee, she might say no. She might think I'm a great person and I have all these terrific qualities, but might not be feeling the same thing where this relationship is going that I am. So communication about that is definitely key.
So how do you know when you're ready for marriage?
How did I know I was ready? Because you was so fine. I had to have you. I would say for me, knowing that you're ready for marriage is understanding within yourself that you've checked all those boxes for yourself. I'm mature enough. I'm established enough. I see what I want. I know what I want in my future. That person is the person I feel that I'm connected to. We have those same goals. We have that same vision. We feel like we're moving in that exact same direction. And I know that together we're only going to go higher. So for me, that's how I knew that I was ready to make Alicia my wife.
So what about trust? Should you trust each other?
Absolutely.
Should you have both people's best interest at heart.
Yes. And you should definitely be able to be yourself around that person. One of the biggest things that you start to develop in a marriage, especially after you've been married a really long time, is that ability to be vulnerable, because that's the only person that you can fully let down your guard. You can fully show who you really are. When I'm high, when I'm low, when I'm happy, when I'm sad, that person's always going to be there and give me that love and that comfort and support. So that's what that vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable around somebody, is very, very important.
So what you're trying to say is that your spouse or your friend or the person that you're thinking about marrying should be your best friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're my best friend.
You're my best friend too.
That's right.
All right.
Some things that people talk about is those fears and concerns that people have about being married also. One of the things that I see that comes up quite a bit is if people come from homes where they had broken marriages, if their parents have been divorced, they have that fear of going down that same path because they feel like the exact same thing is going to happen to them. Why should I put all my eggs in that basket? I'm just going to end up split up like my parents did. I also hear people talk about how they feel that they're going to lose themselves once they become married. All the friends I had, I won't be able to hang out with them anymore. All the hobbies and things I used to be able to do, I can't do them anymore because it's not just me. Now everything is us. So people have a sense of feeling like once I get married that I'm completely lose myself. Do you feel like you lost yourself?
I can say at one point I did, especially when we started having baby after baby after baby. Because I was no longer Alicia. I was mother. I was employee. I was wife. I was everything. And I kind of lost who I was in those various roles. And the one person that allowed me to see that was your Aunt Glenda at one of the family it was a family Christmas, I think. It was some kind of holiday we had. And you guys were playing spades, and I'm over there with all these babies. And and that's when I was like, okay, I got to do something about this because I am losing myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are those fears. There are those concerns that people can have about, being married, about jumping that broom. So those are things that you definitely have to keep in mind. But what's the difference between a marriage and a wedding?
Well, I think for a lot of women, we want to be married as early as being a kid. I think we see ourselves being married. Some of us see ourselves as parents. Some of us see ourselves not as parents. But that societal image of or portrayal or cultural belief of marriage and how it should look, I think a lot of us get stuck in that. I think a lot of us want to be married, but we don't truly understand the work and commitment that it takes to make a marriage successful. And I think we get so caught up on that we forget what a marriage is, and we focus more on what the celebratory wedding is.
But I'm going to have my dress, and it's going to be wide and long, and my man's going to be in his tux, and the groomsmen, and the reception. That's what marriage is all about, right?
No, it is not. The marriage takes place after all of that. And I think a lot of people put more effort into this expensive, extravagant wedding because they're trying to impress everybody else. And you're spending all this money trying to impress everybody else instead of spending all this time trying to make the marriage a successful marriage. And I think we forget about that part. I think we forget about the work after that show, because a wedding is a show.
Yeah, it is.
That's not the real hard work that goes into it. That's not the trials and tribulations that a marriage go through, the ups and downs, even sometimes the financial issues that may occur. So I think a lot of times we as women, not so much men, I don't think, we get stuck on the wedding part. We don't focus on the real work that takes place during a marriage and in a marriage.
But if I never get married, then I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be lonely. I'm going to be all by myself forever, right?
I think a lot of times, I'm going to say women because I'm a woman. Women rush into marriages because they feel like their biological clock is ticking, time is running out, or they may feel, oh, I'm by myself. I don't want to be by myself. I'm lonely. But there are two different definitions between loneliness and being alone. So you have to define which one are you. And a lot of times when you are, I guess, lonely, you feel like you're lonely and you just have to be with somebody. A lot of times you make rash decisions without thinking it out and thinking it through. And then you end up in situations where I wish I hadn't got into this. And it's harder to get out of a marriage than it is to get in.
That's right.
And sometimes when you rush into these things, because of these feelings, these thoughts, you're worse off in the marriage than you were alone.
So that brings us to our next point. You should always be true to yourself. Just like Dr. A was just saying, a lot of times you have this view of what marriage is going to be like, and I don't want to be alone, I don't want to be by myself. But then you start getting those little birds chirping in your ear. Girl, you've been with him all this time, and he ain't put a ring on it yet. Or, bruh, she always at your house, you might as well go ahead and marry her. People will start to put pressure on you about how they view what your life should be like. You might as well get married because you're always together. You might as well get married because you've been dating for 4 years. You might as well get married because of this or that. But deep down inside, you've asked yourself some of these questions that we're already talking about, and you know within yourself that you're not ready. So definitely don't make a rash decision based on peer pressure and rush into something that you know that you're not ready for, because that is just going to be a recipe for disaster. You want to always stay true to what your feelings are and operate and navigate off that. Like Dr. A always says, that small voice that you hear speaking to you, that's what you should be listening to, because it usually never steers you wrong. So those are just a few things to consider as you ask yourself the question if you're ready for marriage. You want to make sure that you understand what the statistics say about how many marriages actually do succeed. More importantly, you want to think about those times where people have been married multiple times, how those numbers continue to go up and up and up. And the thing to keep in mind is that number is actually higher for people in the African American community. We also want to think about the marriage versus the wedding. The wedding is the easy part. Marriage doesn't really start until after you say I do. And those are just things that we want to always keep in mind. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us today. If you enjoyed the information that we shared, hit that like button. But more importantly, hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that every time we put out a new video, you'll be the first ones to know. Have a great day.